I'm going to show you. Now you notice I'm waiting. I didn't even do any announcements really, because I'm going to keep the announcements till later. Y'all need to check out what's being laid down tonight and remember this broadcast. Even before this, I was in the car, had to put prayers out. I know brothers who's working over in Dubai, who is laying for cover, waiting for planes that will allow this particular brother that I care about to get out, who working in the oil fields over there in Dubai. And eventually, everyone is going to have to get out of Dubai, because the Most High is going to bring it down like Sodom and Gomorrah. It was built out of the desert. And it's a place of refuge for those who deal with all levels of debauchery and sin. It's Sodom and Gomorrah on steroids, and guess what? A judgment is coming there. I told people years ago that the 6 million we hear with World War I and World War II was prophetic. It's the 6 million that will happen once Esau pulls back from over that area, because in order for him and the banks to get full control, they must topple and sabotage all of the countries that's against the Rothschild's bank system, that needs to have a grip all throughout the earth before administering the mark of the beast.
They have essentially said that this is the only way, this will be the only way to prove you of legal identity. And so if you don't participate in that system, as far as the state or the private sector is concerned, you don't exist. So by not participating in that system, you're inherently excluded from the economic system and really essentially everything. It's going to be a problem, reaction, solution type of situation where they've already made the solution. They've already developed what they want to be the new financial governance system after this new Bretton Woods moment. They just need some sort of big event on the scale of World War II or some large event that's equally disruptive in order to be like, all right, now it's time for a new financial governance system.
About a year ago, while speaking at the Global Finance Summit in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron said the world needs a public financial shock to fight global warming. Around the same time, World Economic Forum founder and executive chairman Klaus Schwab also made a similar statement about revamping the global economy. In his words, "Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed." "We need a great reset of capitalism," Schwab added in an article published on the non-governmental organization's website. According to popular investigative journalist Whitney Webb, what we are witnessing is the birth of a new international monetary system, a replacement for the current Bretton Woods system built solely on the blockchain to aid the complete surveillance and censorship of every aspect of our lives. Whitney's warnings are based on the words of several global elites and WEF puppets like Macron, as well as the words of Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada, and the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, who said the 3 pillars of the New World Order are digital IDs, CBDCs, and ESG. In a recent discussion with Mark Goodwin, writer and editor-in-chief at Bitcoin Magazine, Whitney warns that all world governments are pushing this New World Order agenda, proudly sponsored by the ultra-rich and powerful, including Silicon Valley executives like Larry Fink, who wants to tokenize all existing assets and commodities, as well as the natural world. Whitney warns that from forests to rivers, mountains, and lakes, everything will soon become a commodity, owned and traded by the super rich and powerful to make them even stronger and move them closer to their goal of completely dominating the rest of us. During the conversation with Goodwin, Whitney discusses 2 important parts of the New World Order plans: digital IDs and natural world tokenization, warning that Schwab, Fink, and useful puppets like Macron are on the verge of achieving their grand plans, and how disastrous that would be for us all.
In this context, I think the digital ID is a key enabler of the surveillance, knowing what everyone is doing at the transactional level and being able to tweak that micromanagement based on a person's activity, because the digital ID isn't just limited to the financial system, right? It's like your travel, your health history, your career history, your education credentials, your access to telecommunications, social media, the internet. With the new AI era, right, they can fuse all that data, analyze it, and depending on how they develop that AI algorithm, use it to control people really in unprecedented ways. I think the digital ID and the CBDC and its private sector equivalence project is something that we're always sort of intended to be the same system. So there's documents from the UN, from the BIS, and related groups that are sort of that have been working on this for years, that essentially frame one as essential to the other, using words about, this is inclusionary, the whole, marketing behind digital ID is that everyone needs a legal ID because otherwise they're unable to access essential services, right? And so the idea is we all have to be included in the system, and they directly link that to the concept of financial inclusion and banking the unbanked, which you brought up earlier. But inherently, these systems actually function in an exclusionary way, based on how they've been set up. They have essentially said that this will be the only way to prove you have legal identity. And so if you don't participate in that system, as far as the state or the private sector is concerned, you don't exist. So by not participating in that system, you're inherently excluded from the economic system and really essentially everything. So you have to onboard to the surveillance state or be excluded from everything. So it's, being marketed as inclusion, but it's really inherently exclusionary.
How does this system get triggered? How do we move into the Mark Carney-ism?
Well, I think they sort of give it away when they say that this is the new Bretton Woods movement that needs to be seized. So Bretton Woods was what came out of World War II, essentially, and was the creation of a new financial governance system after World War II. And this is essentially an effort to create a new financial governance system that was announced well before any sort of crisis like that, but it's probably going to need a crisis of that level to be implemented and to convince people to onboard at scale. And if you subscribe to the theory that all wars are bankers' wars, which there is plenty of evidence to support that, I would say, that seems to suggest that perhaps, this is it's going to be a problem reaction solution type of situation where they've already made the solution. They've already developed what they want to be the new financial governance system after this new Bretton Woods moment. They just need some sort of big event on the scale of World War II or some large event that's equally disruptive in order to be like, all right, now it's time for a new financial governance system after this big event like they did after World War II.
Mm-hmm. The solution has been created. And now all the global elites need is a nice little crisis to tie it all off. Only this won't be a nice crisis. It will be the complete collapse of the entire global financial system. A large percentage of the global population, honest everyday workers, fathers, mothers, and people with aging parents and relatives will be completely devastated, while the 1% of the 1% gain everything. Whitney believes the crisis will be on the same scale as, if not worse, than the economic devastation of the Second World War. After the crisis ends, central and commercial banks will conveniently and proudly present digital currencies, urging people to get on the system to make up for everything they lost during the collapse. However, they will only get a fraction of what was lost. Plus, they will be signing away all their privacy and other rights to the global elites. Imagine a world where you can't buy more meat because all your transactions are strictly monitored, and it's been decided that you've eaten more than your allotted portion of meat during the given period. You go to your local grocery store, pick up the goods, and as the attendant or automated system tries to ring up your order, they get a notification saying you cannot purchase more meat or else the planet dies. This is the future Whitney and Mark are warning us about. What's worse, it does not stop there. Larry Fink and others want to tokenize everything, including the natural world. Here are more clips from the video.
Well, it seems like in Larry Fink's case in particular, there's a goal, well, a big ambition there to develop new asset classes that can be used to basically fuel their existing business model and perpetuate it for, like, I don't know, millennia forward. So one of these that I've been writing about for a few years is the whole idea of natural assets, what they call nature's economy. And one of the groups that has been sort of propelling this forward, at least one of the earlier groups, the Intrinsic Exchange Group, which is a product of the Rockefeller Foundation and the multilateral development banking system, has a graphic on their website called The Opportunity, and they show there the existing amount of assets in the world economy, and then show what it, if we unlock natural assets, how nature's economy, it's like 6 times the amount of existing assets in the economy today. And so as an asset manager, BlackRock being able to unlock and take control of as many natural assets as possible that aren't currently part of the financial system is obviously a way for them to perpetuate what they do and deepen and expand their control over not just people in the existing financial system, but really over the natural world as well, and essentially turn everything alive into a tradable Wall Street financial product. And the goal, as Fink has stated, is to have all of this on a universal ledger, on blockchain presumably, and have it be trackable and surveillable, which is interesting if you look at it through the context of risk management, which is something that Larry Fink is very open as having been one of the guiding lights of his whole career. And so by having it all surveillable and automated in a sense, he's able to have his risk management AI thing, Aladdin, sort of exercise control over it in unprecedented ways, I think, for their benefit. And then, of course, a lot of what's happening now as we're moving into this new financial governance system is the push to change all of the infrastructure towards this, quote unquote, green a green model, I guess, or decarbonization, right? Which is, of course, interface with the global carbon market, but not necessarily so, like it doesn't have to be. But the push is obviously to create a bunch of new infrastructure all over the world, and BlackRock is positioning themselves to be one of the key players in that space. They acquired, I think they're called GIP, one of the biggest infrastructure, developers in the world. And I think one of their top guys at Davos just a few months ago was talking about how they're betting really big on infrastructure going forward, and it's going to be one of the biggest investment opportunities of the next several decades, actually. So I think they're quite ambitious, and if people aren't aware of this, I'm sure they'll get away with it, but we'll see. One of the things too about the natural asset thing, at least as far as the natural asset corporation model is concerned, is that you literally just go into a forest or you go to a river or lake and you identify the natural asset, and then at no cost to you, just after identifying it, you issue shares in the natural asset, a lake, a forest, whatever, and then you sell those shares to sovereign wealth funds, asset managers, whatever, and then you have an IPO and generate all this money. I mean, it's literally just pointing out something outside and being like, this is mine, I'm going to fractionalize it and sell it to people, and you're producing money in like, out of thin air, right, essentially. Yeah. And you're able to do that. I mean, the natural world is vast and huge, and they're doing this, they're financializing it all as framing it as the only way to save the planet. Right. But really it's the only way for them to save their insane debt racket.
In their joint February article titled Tokenized, BlackRock's plan to own the fractionalized world, Whitney and Mark give a stern warning about BlackRock and Larry Fink's plans. You will allow BlackRock to build the panopticon of tokenized Earth with Americans' retirement money under the dialectic pretext of owning the liberals, unknowingly connecting all aspects of ownership to centralized databases, walled identity gardens, and fractionalized reserve assets transmitted and issued on the private blockchains of Wall Street banks. The warring factions within the Davos squabble over the spoils but never against the plan. Fulfilling Agenda 2030 requires complicit cooperation as much as compromised corporations. Do not confuse free market capitalism with cronyism or cartelism, which is the capitalist model embodied by Fink and his fellow Wall Street ilk. The problem is not just what they are planning, it's the half-truths they continuously tell the world until it is too late to stop the disaster, and how they demonize anyone trying to warn people about their plans. They've eaten so deep into our systems and every aspect of society that it would take nothing short of divine intervention to stop their plans. This is why people like Whitney often emphasize the importance of getting out of the system before it's too late, as that's the only way to protect yourself against what's coming. Please share your thoughts on Whitney's warnings and predictions of an impending collapse of the global financial system in the comments section below.
So when you see locusts, you're a spiritual person who understands prophecy. Folks, we're about to go into the Passover. And now the Most High is showing all the plagues and everything right before the children of Israel received the law. Right before the death angel came through and passed over those who believed, who had the blood on the door. The plagues came before the Passover, folks. And here it is, right after New Year. Right after the New Year, on the cusp of that, we're seeing what? We're seeing what? Locusts. You think it's a coincidence, folks? That's why I told the leaders, I told all the brothers and sisters, hey, y'all better not respond to that stuff out there. Let it be out there. We're in an opportunity under Christ to be navigated through this. And understand that everyone is showing who they are. Like I said, I did a prayer not just for the brother over there in Dubai. Also, there's another brother that I know who's stuck in Iraq. I had to talk to. Now, how they got there and why they were there, I have no idea. But guess what? When it all goes down, guess who they know they can call out of nowhere? And what did I do? I started making things happen. And say the first thing smoking, get up out of there and get yourself into some straight territory. Some safe territory. Straight up. I said, I'm going to pray for you. Send everything I could to help. Okay. People go to these places because it's extra money, but the extra money is because you're flying into a danger zone. That's why they'll pay you all that money to be in these areas, because it's very volatile. You can lose your life on these pipelines and all these others. But I didn't say, well, hold up. What you going over there for? That's on you. I'm like, nah, you reached out to me. I'm going to do everything I can to get you to safety. Because that's what we do. That's what we do. Right? I told people years ago, you better get out of Jordan. I'll tell you what, stick around if you would like. I told people, get out of there. Hey,
other countries were promised.
Look at what happened in Cyprus.
Cyprus is one of the countries.
Cyprus offers facilities for evacuation as Iran began bombing.
Welcome to Cyprus, my Israeli.
And guess who started what?
Shalom.
By the plane loads.
God promised me about it.
Guess who started evacuating into Cyprus and the Greek islands?
If I don't steal it, someone else will. This is my house.
The majority of people
3,000 years ago.
in Israel, Israelis who had the money and the wherewithal to get out of harm's way
3,000 years ago.
before they began to bomb Tel Aviv. And then what happens? Because Cyprus allowed refuge, Iran struck, that's right, a Britain military base near Limassol.
Iran hits Europe. For the first
A bomb
time
went
since
over the
tensions
waters
between
and
Iran
struck
and the
Cyprus,
West spiraled
a British
into open
base. No one is talking about this. Folks, they didn't go into Israel under some biblical pretense of restoration. That's the story they sold naive Christians. They went there to do what they're doing, to put the whole earth under, that's right, one control, bank system leading to the mark of the beast. I'm going to show you that in a moment.
Backroom deals, betrayal, and a war that's lasted almost 100 years. This is what happened when the richest family in the world decided to create their own country. In 1917, the Rothschilds, the trillion-dollar family that invented modern-day banking, used their money, power, and influence to strike a secret deal with the British government. That deal eventually led to the creation of the country of Israel. But what makes this story more bizarre is the crazy personality of the man who orchestrated this deal, Lord Walter Rothschild. Walter Rothschild was an enigmatic mega-billionaire with so much money that instead of using horses to pull his carriage, he imported zebras from Africa just to show off. This same billionaire also had a super weird hobby of gathering insects and bugs, eventually amassing over 1 million butterflies, moths, and other insects. The Jews are some of the most intelligent, industrious people in the world. However, for years, the millions of Jews scattered around Europe had been trying to secure a large piece of land to start the country of Israel. But no matter how hard they tried, they got nothing. That was until they linked up with the super-rich Walter Rothschild, a man who could change the world with the snap of his finger. By the early 1900s, the Rothschilds were already the most powerful family in Europe. They were so wealthy that they had even given loans to the entire country of France to stabilize the economy. However, aside from their power, the Rothschilds also had a reputation for being extremely ruthless. They wouldn't hesitate to wield their power as a weapon to bulldoze through their enemies and crush anyone who opposed them. If the Rothschilds wanted something, they better get it, or they'd be hell to pay. Walter Rothschild made the calls he needed to make, pulled the strings he needed to pull, and in 1917, the British government sent Walter an official letter promising to do everything within their power to provide land for the creation of Israel. That letter redesigned the map of the world, and if you need proof, we have a copy of that letter.
November the 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
So it's possibly the most famous letter in modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words: Dear Lord Rothschild.
That letter, nicknamed the Balfour Declaration, is proof that it was the Rothschild family that created Israel. But there's even more evidence. In this interview, the head of the Rothschild family proudly explains how his ancestors created Israel. The interviewer begins by asking the question that was on everyone's mind.
Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
The reason is obvious. Because it was the Rothschilds' money, power, and influence that made the British government fall in line. Years later, Britain kept their promise to the Rothschilds and provided a large piece of land to start Israel. And in May 1948, the State of Israel was officially created. Although this was good news, the Rothschilds were just getting started. What the Rothschilds did next was even more impressive. They invested millions of dollars into Israel, building schools, roads, and everything needed to turn that piece of land into a beautiful country. James Rothschild single-handedly paid for Israel's Congress building, while Dorothy D. Rothschild paid for Israel's Supreme Court building. However, the more money the Rothschilds spent, the more problems they created. Why? Because the land the British gave to Israel actually belonged to another group of people, called the Palestinians. And that land dispute sparked the series of conflicts between Israelis and Palestinians that's gone on for decades. But we're not here to talk about the war. We're talking about power. Specifically, the power of the Rothschild dynasty. Whatever you've heard about how powerful the Rothschilds are is nothing compared to the true scale of their influence. YouTube has dozens of videos about the Rothschilds, but this one is different. Because instead of merely talking about the Rothschilds, we'll sift through centuries of history to reveal 5 times the Rothschild family used money, violence, and power to reshape reality and mold the world in their own image. Starting with the time when the Rothschilds invented the banking industry that we have today. And the way they did it is more brutal than you can imagine. The Rothschilds didn't get into banking because they wanted to make the world a better place. They did it because they wanted power. And this thirst for power started in 1744 with Mayer Amschel Rothschild. From a young age, Mayer lived by the code that money is power. But even though he needed money to get power, Mayer was born to a middle-income family living in the ghettos of Frankfurt. However, Mayer had a plan to go from rags to riches. As a young man, he began a money-lending business. He started with a small amount and gradually grew his capital. Though this sounds pretty straightforward, the big problem with money lending is that people sometimes don't pay back what they borrow. But Mayer was a hard man, and he did whatever was necessary to get his loans paid with interest. Even from a young age, he developed a reputation as someone you shouldn't mess with. Mayer also maneuvered himself to become the personal banker of members of the German royal family. Over time, Mayer's small money lending and exchange business ballooned into a successful financial institution. But despite all his success, Mayer knew that there was one enemy that could destroy everything he had built. And that enemy was time.
And then the people that are left over there will be the burnt sacrifice in the Middle East to Moloch. That's the plan. Folks, they're trying to play it off here in the United States as if listening to these politicians saying that this is going to be a cakewalk like Iraq. Folks, if they thought that, they would have been bombed Iran. If they thought, they knew that once this war began, it will become uncontrollable, which is the plan. So that Moloch can get as much blood as possible while they go right back to where they came from.
Among the most significant are 4 systems.
And then what happens?
How Iran's missile technology has evolved.
Iran is going to strike all the oil pipelines that America depends on. And then what happens? And then what happens? Depression. Everything goes up based on the fact that the oil reserves are low.
Nobody in the U.S. is paying more for gas than Californians, as usual. Even Hawaii and New York are less expensive right now.
That's a tough pill to swallow. Mario Ramirez shows us just how painful the pump has become in SoCal. Good morning.
Yeah, that's right. Definite sticker shock, and drivers are feeling the pain. We're noticing it here. Just take a look. This guy here is actually filling up his tank, and you'll notice here on the ground he's got 2 additional gallons ready to be filled up because he says the prices are just too high, so he knows they're climbing. He's going to take as much gas as he can right now while it's at the price it is. It's at $4.79 a gallon here at this station if you're paying in cash, $4.89 if you're paying with credit. Now, take a look at this. Skyfox over what may be one of the most expensive places to fill up in Southern California. A Chevron station on Alameda in downtown LA showing $8.31 for a gallon of regular unleaded, and that's more than $3 higher than what some drivers are paying at cheaper stations like the one we're at right now. Experts say global tensions involving Iran and disrupted oil shipping are a big part of what's driving prices up. And when you look at the regional averages, prices are quickly moving toward the $6 mark. Take a look. According to AAA, LA County is around $5.38 a gallon this morning. Orange County, $5.34. Ventura County, $5.32. And both Riverside and San Bernardino counties around $5.26 a gallon. Meanwhile, drivers we spoke with while filling up this morning say the price hike is hitting their budgets hard.
That's how you weaken a nation.
One of the most important oil facilities in the Persian Gulf and setting it on
And here
fire.
it is, even
That's exactly
Ishmael,
what when an
the United
Iranian
Emirates,
ballistic
they
missile
thought they would be
struck
protected.
Bahrain's largest
Come
oil
to find
refinery,
out, a lot of their
triggering a
oil
massive
reserves are being
blaze
hit now, and they're
sending
trying to figure,
thick
like, hold
black
up, we're on your
smoke
side.
into the night
What are
sky.
you doing? And they don't
The
know.
dramatic
Esau
strike
is like,
targeted
listen.
a facility that processes hundreds of thousands of barrels of
Okay.
oil every day.
We got to do what we got to do. Esau ain't playing.
The region's energy infrastructure, and it's not just
Esau
about
double
Iran.
crosses
This
everyone.
attack could
Don't
have
you know
global
that?
consequences for oil markets and the wider Middle East conflict. Late on the evening of March 5th, 2026, authorities confirmed
Don't you know that?
an Iranian missile hit
So
the
here it
units of
is.
the
Let me go
Bapco
through it
Energies
now.
refinery on Sitra Island, south of Bahrain's capital, Manama.
Just to bring some levity here, years ago between the Iranians and the United States, there have been conflict going back decades now.
In 1948, Israel was born into a sea of enemies. They were surrounded. But David Ben-Gurion had a genius, desperate plan, the Periphery Doctrine. He looked past the hostile Arab nations and saw a natural ally in the east, the Persians. Iran wasn't Arab. They were an ancient empire with a shared history of displacement. The Shah of Iran saw the same thing. Together, they formed a strategic triangle with the United States. It wasn't just a friendship, it was a wall against the Soviet Union and a masterclass in power. But how did the US get so deep into the mix? It started with a coup. In 1953, the CIA and British intelligence did the unthinkable. They toppled Iran's prime minister to put the Shah back on the throne. Why? Oil. The US needed a policeman in the Persian Gulf. They gave the Shah every weapon he wanted, from F-14 Tomcats to nuclear tech. In return, the Shah gave the world stability. For 25 years, Iran was the most modern, westernized, and powerful nation in the region. This is the part they hide in history books. Israel and Iran were so close, they built a secret pipeline together, the Eilat-Ashkelon. Iranian oil literally powered the Israeli military. Mossad and the CIA helped the Shah build his elite intelligence agency, Savak. They weren't just neighbors, they were business partners. Tehran was a playground for the West. Miniskirts, arts, rock music, and high-tech industry. It looked like the future. But underneath the gold and the oil, a storm was brewing. Then came 1979. The Islamic Revolution didn't just change a government, it flipped the world upside down. Ayatollah Khomeini realized that to lead the Islamic world, he couldn't be Persian, he had to be the anti-West. Overnight, the US became the Great Satan, Israel became the Little Satan. The 52 American hostages in Tehran didn't just end a relationship, they burned the bridge forever. The allies who built the Middle East's infrastructure were now the targets of its missiles. Today, we see the headlines of drones and proxy wars.
I told everyone, don't think about Russia and all that. Russians are Edomites, okay? You can't tell me America has a problem with Russians when you can go throughout the whole United States and there's Russians everywhere.
Russian mafia in America. Ever wondered what happened to the KGB after the Cold War? Some became criminal masterminds. The fall of the Soviet Union created chaos and opportunity. Former KGB agents, skilled in espionage and violence, saw a chance to profit. Brighton Beach, NYC became a key base for Russian organized crime. They engaged in extortion, fraud, and even murder. Did our victory in the Cold War inadvertently empower a new criminal empire? Some argue that the instability we fostered allowed them to flourish.
Iran is the prophecy. That's the prophecy. Hit that like button. Look what the Ayatollah said about Judah in America years ago. And again, I'm going to say it one more time. Because of crap like this, we have to ditch the label African American. Okay? They're going to use people like they did through guerrilla warfare in different areas as campaigns to undermine us and to attach us to all of these events that lead to what? That lead to now the country turning on our people who aren't doing it. We don't have nothing to do with any of this. So they're trying to pull us in. Right? So let's see what the Ayatollah said years ago about our people during a time where they actually had hostages in Iran.
Perhaps today, some black hostages and some female hostages will be released from the American embassy compound. Is that?
He said some black and some female hostages will be released from compounds when Iran had hostages in Iran. This is 1979, folks. And Iran said, you know what? We'll release the women and we'll release all the black Americans. Why?
That true?
The freedom of the women and blacks will be given.
The freedom of the women and the blacks will be given.
Women are given great dignity in Islam, and the blacks have been oppressed in the United States.
And the blacks have been oppressed in the United States.
Great injustice was done unto them.
Great injustices was done unto them.
They were under pressure in the United States. Thus they came here. We are doing this owing to the tenets of Islam. In return, we ask nothing.
In return, we ask nothing. Folks, not just Iran. See, and this is why they don't want our people to travel outside of the controlled media we see here within the United States. every other place on earth, we're respected on the level God's people should be respected. I mentioned this. Brothers and sisters, I'm sitting there in Alexandria. Alexandria, Egypt. I was in an area called San Stefano, not too far from the Four Seasons there in Alexandria. Alexandria is where our forefathers were. Goshen. Okay? Through the travels, as the Most High had me, through the Spirit of the Almighty, begin to spread the word throughout the earth. I'm sitting on a couch across from a Muslim, Ishmaelite, very polite man. And he's just staring at me. I'm sitting there, you know, I don't have on a mitre or nothing, and I'm just sitting there. He's standing across from me. And I noticed this guy keep looking at me. So I asked the other brother, who could speak the language fluently, what's up with your man? Right? Why is he staring at me? And the man began to speak. He said in Arabic, "We know who you are in America. You're Bani Yaqub." So I know Bani Yaqub. I knew when he said Bani Yaqub, that didn't need translation for me. Sons of Jacob. And when he asked, what are we doing here, being translated back to him, the Most High is going to have us proclaim the truth before the end. And we will stand on this earth as God's people, princes of God. And this guy, through translation, asked lawyer. He was there. This guy, through translation, stated, "We know. We've been waiting for you." And when Christ sets you up, remember us. Remember us.
You shine your Christ the light and never lose sight like the children of the night. Yeah, believe me and my ox, we be dressed in all white. It's not by
Think about that, folks. This is the only place we're not appreciated for what value we've brought to the earth, not just America. If only our people knew how great they are. Everybody else understand it. Hence the reason all people try to get proximity to us in order to receive anything out of the earth. You notice that? So when I seen this, when the brother sent me, I'm like, I can totally understand what he's saying. Why there was black, so-called black American, Judite, slaves, children of slaves who went to Iran. He allowed them to go free when they were caught. And you know why? Because he understands the oppression. The oppression, even being rejected by our own family, who sold us. There was no white man grabbing us from the shores of West Africa, folks. They sold us and left us for dead. We forgot our history. In the old world, they know. Hit that like button. We going in. So what happens? Breaking news. No soon as it all went down, Iran began to strike.
One of Israel's most strategically critical air
Right after those strikes, Saturday, going into Sunday, Iran began to strike Dimona, Israel's nuclear power plants. Now let me give you a little history here, folks.
Approximately 15 kilometers from Dimona itself, Israel downplayed the damage. The crater
okay. In the 60s, there was a such thing as the 60s, early 70s, the Nuclear Proliferation Act. Look it up.
Israel is assessed by SIPRI to possess over 80.
See, you got to know what's going on over there to understand prophecy, folks. Look it up. It was called the Nuclear Proliferation Act. What is that? Well, all countries had to declare if they had nuclear weapons, and if so,
no confirmed direct hit on the reactor.
Right, they had to report it to the international body, governing body.
Israel's nuclear ambiguity.
And if it wasn't approved, they would have to do what? Dispose of any weapons that weren't proclaimed. Well, when the Nuclear Proliferation Act happened, there was only one country who refused to say they had nuclear weapons. Everyone else had to play by the rules. America had to throw their hat in. Everybody had to throw their hat in. Okay, boom. Egypt threw their hat in. They got nuclear weapons. It was only one country, and I'm going to have y'all guess this, who didn't declare that they had nuclear capability. Who would you think that is? Put it in the chat. The one country you didn't have to disclose the nuclear capabilities they had at that time. Put it in the chat. Thank you. Israel. It wasn't Iran. At that time, Iran wasn't enriching anything at that time. It was Israel. Israel. No, it wasn't Iran. It was Israel. The one country that wouldn't say that they had nuclear capability. Now, how was they able to get away with this? One would ask. They was able to get away with this because all of a sudden some black people who was trying to get in to Israel and weren't allowed. Only their women were allowed. Under Ben-Ami, which was who? Ben-Ami had an Israelite group called the African Israelites in Dimona. And now they would coincidentally build a place for themselves in Dimona. Isn't that convenient? The same black people you weren't allowed in, you're going to all of a sudden allow them to do construction in this same area where it was suspected something was going on. See? So if they're building there using our people as a cover, then they can be doing other things there that will allow people to believe nothing is actually happening. If you get what I'm putting down here. So Dimona was used as a cover. That's right. So that no one can suspect that something else was getting built there. And I told brothers years ago and sisters, get out of Dimona. A matter of fact, the girl that we don't even know this girl that be attacking the church and using our name. She came out of that same, I would say, compound under Ben-Ami. That's where she come from. And when that thing was going flat, she began to try to attach herself to us. We told people years ago, get out of there. And look at what just happened there. Fair use.
The situation, guys, over in Israel today on March the 1st is extremely, extremely dire right now. Israel has dealt, along with the United States, very crippling blows to to Iran, but Iran now has targeted the Dimona nuclear power plant in Israel. And according to this video right here, it is leaking radioactive material.
Now, I'm going to tell you, it's our people who don't believe what? That fat grease is greasy.
When nuclear facilities are now in the line of fire.
That fat meat is greasy.
No longer just military, but potentially catastrophic.
It's our people who don't believe that fat meat is greasy. I've been telling people for years
in what appears to be a retaliatory move
to get from up under this place.
Nuclear power plant.
And then Israel tried to throw a bone. Esau tried to throw a bone and saying that y'all need to go back to y'all country, this, that, and the other. Y'all cannot be here. And you had many people fighting for our people to stay there. When really, the state of Israel was trying to let them know, y'all better get up out of here before y'all become a sacrifice.
They're officially
our people are hard-headed.
Of Jerusalem. The way they tell the story, they were driven out of the Holy Land
they're hard-headed
years ago by the Romans.
So now look what's going on there now.
Africa, where they were enslaved.
The radiation fallout that will come from them striking a nuclear plant is unquantifiable.
Sees himself as a modern-day prophet who brought his people.
Yeah, people are stiff-necked, but you know what? You got to let them flow. Let them be them.
By my love for the community, my love
Folks,
for Israel, and my love for all people.
Our people, especially those who are rebels, who think they can operate by themselves, they've convinced themselves that it's okay. They think the Most High is with them.
2,000 black Hebrews, as they're called, have made their home in.
I'm gonna tell you that right now. The Most High's not with them.
They're best known as singers, and by and large, that's how
See?
they sustain their community.
But the only way to justify where they are is they must view and make other people believe that something is wrong somewhere else.
Their modern-day exodus began in 1966.
I'm going to go into that as the prophecies unfold, because this thing is being broken down on every level of war, physical and or spiritual.
Back then, Ben Army was known as plain old Ben Carter, a bus driver in Chicago. A bus driver who had a vision.
I told these brothers and sisters when they was there, Dimona.
Bring the word of God.
Great, loving brothers following the law. They were vegans. They had a place in Atlanta years ago that I went to. They had some nice food in Atlanta. But then they started going off calling Ben Ami the Messiah.
Right next door to Israel's top secret nuclear.
Now, I'm not going to go into all the negatives that are being reported
First, they were welcomed
from amongst what they were dealing with, because I don't have time for that.
The black Hebrews,
but just to say that this man was the Messiah,
even the birth of the Jewish people,
was alarming enough.
They refused to
Unfortunately, the Most High took him. May the Most High have mercy on Ben Ami, because what he did represent was what? People who was willing to stand on Israelite business. Okay? Without being ashamed of calling himself a child of God. All due respect to that. But they weren't supposed to be in that land until the true Messiah, God's guide us back. Until the true Messiah guides us back, we weren't supposed to be there.
The black Hebrews are vegans.
So I pray that those in the Dimona area are safe, and that the Most High have allowed them to get to refuge. Okay? It's more about our people making it and having the opportunity to do so. Right? So I wanted to put that out there.
Just to add to the mix, the Black Hebrews are polygamous as well. Ben-Ami has 5 wives.
Right? Now, what are we dealing with scripture-wise before I go into a few more things? Hold tight. We're going into prophecy now. One moment. I have to go into this. We have to break this down concerning the time we're living in. Now, what we were told in the United States would be a quick and swift regime change like what happened in Iraq. Now, all of a sudden, the narrative is switching up. They're changing now. They're switching things up. Right? 3 million citizens came out. 3 million to the Ayatollah's funeral. Now, heads of state are supposed to be protected at all costs in the midst of any war. But like I said earlier, EDOM can change the rules as he goes. Okay? 3 million came out. It's one thing that you're not supposed to take out heads of state, especially a religious figure, to make them a martyr. Now, you don't do something like this unless you seek to incinerate an enemy to a degree where all of their citizenry would fight to the death. So what we thought initially was going to be a scenario in which they claim would be swift and all of this, it seems as if they're switching the narrative now. Trump says there will likely be more U.S. deaths as Iran strikes to continue until all goals are achieved. Now, this was
captures the terminal phase of
Saturday.
Shar-4 ballistic missiles. These units feature a
putting it out there already that many Americans are going to die in this war.
Bypass the Arrow 3 defense layer. The IRGC launched a retaliatory salvo targeting.
And now they're switching it. They said it was going to be a few weeks. Now they're claiming that this conflict, that's right, folks, that's what they call something when they don't want to declare war. This conflict, which we all know is a war, now they're claiming can last months now. Where did we hear that before? Oh, remember when we were told during the so-called pandemic that, hey, we're just going to be locked into our homes for 2 weeks? Remember that? Just 2 weeks until everything calmed down. Fauci was out there. Biden was in the cellar, in the basement somewhere, eating Cheerios, if that was even Biden. Right? We were told that we're just gonna make sure there's no contact for 2 weeks while this thing dies down, and then things go back to normal. Remember that? Same script, folks, but a different war plan. See, that war plan was a bio-weapon war plan. That was bio-warfare.
Sir, do not open that door.
See? So it's the same script, but a different type of war. So now to settle people, so to not understand what's coming down the pipeline very soon, what they've done is claim that this is going to be swift, Saddam Hussein, they're going to be like Iraq, regime change, and we'll go back to normal. Knowing that this thing will never end, but escalate. Right? So what happens? Out of nowhere, March 3rd, this happens. Fair use.
Iranian ballistic missiles struck central Tel Aviv, and according to footage broadcast by Iran's Press TV, at least some of them were not intercepted. The visuals show multiple explosions tearing through densely populated streets, burning vehicles, and thick black smoke rising over what appears to be a residential district. Associated Press images confirmed firefighters responding to scorched vehicles in central Israel after the strikes. Israel's Magen David EDOM rescue service said at least...
I wanted to show that, folks. This is what's going on right now. What's going on right now?
I want to take you now to the shores of occupied Palestine, where the unthinkable is unfolding in real time. For weeks, we have watched the propaganda machines in Tel Aviv and Washington spin tales of military invincibility, of an impenetrable iron dome, and of a grand coalition standing firm against Iran. But tonight, the images coming out of the Haifa port, Ashdod, and even the marinas of Herzliya tell a completely different story.
A U.S. ship is standing by to evacuate Americans from the northern port of Haifa in Israel to Cyprus.
American citizens hoping to get out of Israel are gathering at a port right now where a ship taking them to Cyprus will leave in just a few hours. Rick Clennett is on the scene in Haifa for it.
We are witnessing a mass exodus. Israeli settlers, the very population that the occupying regime claims to be protecting, are scrambling desperately towards the Mediterranean Sea. They are not heading to the beach for a holiday. They are fleeing. Their destination? Cyprus. The reason? It has become painfully, and for them, terrifyingly evident that the Israeli military has lost the missile war. The air defense systems, once touted as the most sophisticated in the world, are depleted. The stockpiles of interceptors are gone. And as the reality of that collapse sets in, so too does the panic. We are seeing videos of chaos at the ports, people abandoning luxury cars, clutching suitcases, fighting for spaces on private yachts and any vessel that will take them across the water. This is not the image of a strong Israel. This is the image of a regime that has overreached, that has provoked a regional power far more capable than its propaganda suggested, and is now watching its citizens run for their lives while its military struggles to defend even the skies over Tel Aviv. The situation on the ground has deteriorated so rapidly that even the United States is now admitting what we at independent outlets have been reporting for months. The so-called moral army is running on empty. Reports from U.S. officials, speaking to outlets like Semaphore and confirmed by Middle East Eye, reveal that Israel has formally informed Washington that its ballistic missile interceptors are at a dangerously low level. Think about that for a moment. This is a military that entered this current round of conflict already depleted from last June's skirmishes. Now, with Iran's sustained barrage, the cupboard is bare. We are learning that the U.S., despite its bravado, is struggling to keep up. American armament executives are quietly admitting that the production lines simply cannot match Iranian capacity. One official was quoted as saying that while Iran is producing over 100 missiles a month, the United States can barely manufacture a handful of the most advanced interceptors in the same time frame. The cost dynamics alone are staggering. We are talking about Iran using relatively low-cost missiles and drones to force Israel and the U.S. to expend millions of dollars per interceptor. This is a war of attrition, and the side with the deep military-industrial complex is losing. It has become a simple numbers game. As one defense analyst put it, Even if the U.S. has a virtually unlimited supply of bombs to drop on civilians, its supply of defensive interceptors is finite and is being exhausted at a terrifying rate. This is not just a matter of stockpiles. It is a matter of reality on the streets of Tel Aviv. Just hours ago, more than 20 explosions were reported across greater Tel Aviv. The Israeli ambulance service, Magen David Adom, is scrambling to respond to reports of cluster munition fragments falling across several areas. We have reports of a 2-story building sustaining a direct hit, engulfed in flames, with settlers trapped inside the rubble. This is the result of the air defense systems being overwhelmed. When the Iron Dome, the David Sling, and the Arrow systems run out of ammunition, or are simply bypassed by advanced Iranian missile technology, including missiles carrying sub-munitions designed to overwhelm defenses, the consequences are catastrophic. The illusion of safety is shattered. For weeks, we watched these same settlers celebrating in their shelters, cheering as Israeli and American bombs rained down on Iranian cities, killing civilians under the guise of self-defense. They cheered for the assassination of military leaders, ignoring the fact that these assassinations came at the cost of dozens of innocent Iranian lives. Now, the chickens have come home to roost. The war has come to their doorsteps, and instead of standing their ground, they are running. And the world is watching them swarm the ports like rats fleeing a sinking ship, desperate to reach the shores of Cyprus, a nation that is increasingly signaling that they are not welcome. Before we continue with the details of this unfolding catastrophe and the justified anger brewing in Cyprus, I want to ask you to do something. If you believe in honest journalism, if you are tired of the Western media narrative that justifies every Israeli war crime while demonizing the resistance, hit that like button.
And I mentioned earlier, folks, even the Bible stated that the Most High will first send what? Fishers than hunters. It's almost hunting season. I said it earlier. They're going to do everything to try to stop those who believe in the Bible from teaching the Bible. Why? The Bible is the only book that can resolve and uncover exactly what's going on prophetically throughout the earth. See, Satan can only operate through deceit. In order for people to be on board, they have to convince people of something else. Well, it's hard to do that if they know the narrative according to the Bible, which makes the Bible a threat. On top of that, like I said earlier, what the Most High allowed us to do through the Holy Spirit is one particular thing that AI cannot duplicate. See? You can go to Chat GPT, you can do this, you can do that, and you get a lot of information that's already stored. But to bring forth real-time prophecy from the throne through the Holy Spirit cannot be mimicked. Hence the reason eventually they're going to make what we're doing, teaching the Bible, that's right, a crime. No one was pointing out who the synagogue of Satan was until we put it together and started going out on the streets and telling people who they are. They know that the Most High and Christ is communicating through his people. They know it. So what I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, all of you out there, appreciate and take full stock of the opportunity we have right now while there's still time to connect. So what are we doing prophetically? It's time to go in now. It's time to go in. I keep emphasizing, I've emphasized over and over the times we're in. According to 2nd Baruch, the 27th chapter, Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this out of the pseudepigrapha of the Old Testament. It's almost the same prophecy we hear about through Christ. When he says wars, rumors of wars, betrayal. Well, the Most High showed all this to Baruch some 500 years before Christ was born almost. And Christ quantified the times we would be living in the end days. Let me read this real quick. 2 Baruch, the 27th chapter. I'll read it. And he answered and said unto me, into 12 parts is that time divided. And each one of them is reserved for that which is appointed for it. In the first part there shall be the beginning of commotions. So before Christ comes back, you're going to hear about commotions, just things, just unnecessary stuff. Commotion. Not even realizing that the commotions are distractions. That doesn't move the needle at all. It just have our heart someplace it doesn't need to be. And a time in which we should be focused on the prophecies. Commotions. Second part, slayings of the great ones. A spirit that would be put out there to harm those who are actually leading and doing the Most High's work. They'll be putting out spirits that would lead people to want to kill the teachers, those who would do right and guide the people through. And in the third, the fall of many by death. Like not only what we were seeing during the time where they separated us from our families and didn't allow us to go in the room when Remdesivir and all these other things was happening. Where the news was actually reporting the number of deaths. But then, here's death through war.
Show us your vaccine card. We'll get you
and the fallout for the people who took certain stuff and are only waiting to die before that stuff kicks in.
I'm getting a very good feeling.
And in the fourth part, the sending of the sword, declaration of war.
This image that was seen on the uniform of an Israeli soldier. Look closely. What do you see? You see Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, and a small part of Turkey. And next to it is written, the Promised Land. What does this mean? Are Israel only fighting a defensive war? Or do they have a hidden agenda to continue to expand their land by taking over the countries around them?
Pike served as a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. Following the war, Pike was jailed for treason. He was quickly pardoned by a fellow Freemason, President Andrew Johnson. Among eventually becoming a 33-degree Mason and a top leader of the Ku Klux Klan, Pike was also believed to be a Luciferian. He claimed he was able to summon Lucifer at will as the Grand Master of the Order of the Palladium. Palladism, or traditional Satanism, an ancient Luciferian cult, was then introduced to the inner circle of the Masonic lodges. This influence has flourished into modern-day Freemasonry in the super rights of the upper degrees. Industry, entertainment, the CIA, Congress, and our military leaders are inundated with Freemasonic paladism, or a Luciferian New World Order. What follows are the chilling predictions, or better yet, instructions of Albert Pike's 3 world wars, funded in great part by the House of Rothschild. From a letter that he wrote to 33-degree Italian Illuminati head and mafia founder Giuseppe Mazzini, dated August 15th, 1871. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agentures of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments in order to weaken the religions. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery and of the most bloody turmoil. Then, everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. A bizarre letter indeed. And a red flag may have gone off when you heard the term Nazism, but the term Nazism was known to those in the Illuminati at that time. Will we allow this madness to unfurl unabated, or will we put a halt to it before it's too late?
And the fifth part, famine and the withholding of rain. I'm going to break down what that is in a moment. How we can quantify what that is within our current society. And in the sixth part, earthquakes and terrorists. And in the eighth, wanting. And in the eighth, the seven is wanting. And in the eighth part, a multitude of specters and attacks of the Shadim. Now, what was Baruch seeing here? And in the ninth part, the fall of fire. And in the 10th part, rapine and much oppression. And in the 11th part, wickedness and unchastity. Which means we'll be living in a society where you would have what? Rarely a girl that's left a virgin. So the unchastity is talking about relationships, but yet you can't find a virgin, a person who haven't been tampered or touched. And in the 12th part, confusion, from the mingling together of all those things aforesaid. Now listen to this. For these parts of that time are reserved, and shall be mingled one with another, and minister one to another. For some shall leave off some of their own, and receive in its stead, and others, and some complete their own, and that of others. So that those may not understand who are upon the earth. So this is a heavenly view of how the angels are viewing the chaos in the earth. So that those may not understand who are upon the earth in those days, that this is the consummation of times, that they're living in, and that they'll be living in the end of the world. Being caught up in so much of the chaos, they don't even realize that all of what they're caught up into is so that they can be looking one place, not realizing they should have been preparing in the spirit of Christ.
I said them Edomites think they own everything. I said them Amalekites think they own everything. I said them Khazars think they own everything. Them Idumeans think they own everything.
I'm feeling the vibe, I'm about to get loose. Hit the dance floor, that's what I came to do. It's up, we're going crazy, they're playing my song. Time to get busy, cause we're praising all night long. Showing love and yes, it's about to go up. Sabbath vibes, we on a high and elders about to show up. From the front to the back, right? Everybody raise their hands for the most high. And if you're really in the groove, move your body from side to side. Kwame Asherala, Aki, you down to ride. It's a party, everybody's in motion. Sliding on the dance floor, it look like we floating. I'm so alive. Everybody came here to function. Righteous vibes, only here for the chosen.
We're on the way fast like the ocean. Cool like a breeze, look how I'm moving. No, you ain't got to worry about nothing. You just gotta get some. Check out my flow, see how I do it. On my two-step, I'm dancing to the music.
Benji,
oh, what you say?
party time, I know you feel it, yeah. Can't sit down, get on your feet, me say. Deep in all your soul, it's high, the spirit, I go vibe, you know the island track, yeah. Beats a flow like ocean waves, jamming on for days and days. Reviving music from the grave, you know the track, me, I go blaze. El Shaddai, you know me, I forgive and praise. The sky declare the song they upon replay. You try to leave, but no, say you want to stay. Me grab your waist and dance in the tune away. Don't make no haste, the efforts me put delay. Your movement don't remind me, I go lose my mind. You know if I wind the rhythm, my soul divine. B-E-N to the J-I, make no fret for the queen I. Got to know your destiny, so baby, keep the dance step on me. B-E-N to the J-I, make no fret for the queen I. That means say your destiny, so baby, keep your brace step on me. Dance still lovely.